You know when you see a number so big, it's just a blur of zeros? Or a decimal so tiny, it's basically invisible? These are the numbers that run our universe, from galaxies down to atoms, but man, they can feel impossible to get your head around. Well, today we're going to wrangle them. We're going to turn all that chaos into pure clarity with one simple, super powerful tool.
Okay, so let's just be real for a second. Which one of these actually makes more sense to your brain at a quick glance?
Is it the one on the left where you've got to physically stop and count all those zeros? Or the one on the right? It's clean, it's compact, and it tells you the scale of the number instantly. Yeah, it's a no-brainer, right? That thing on the right, that's called standard form, or you might hear it called scientific notation. And that is our secret weapon for today.
So yeah, that's what this is all about. We're going to break down the simple trick that scientists use to measure galaxies and that engineers use to build microchips. Let's dive in. All right, to really get this, we've got to start with the gut feeling, the intuition. So forget the textbook rules for a minute and let's just focus on one simple idea, the jump.
Just think of it like this. Standard form is just a shortcut for saying, how many jumps of 10 did I have to take? Every single time you move that decimal point, that's one jump. The final number, it's just a little record of how many jumps you took and which way you went.
Okay, let's take the number 3,000. Now, the decimal point is kind of hiding there at the very end, right? So we're going to jump it 1, 2, 3 spots to the left, so it lands right after the 3. Since we made 3 jumps, that becomes our power of 10. And that's it. 3 times 10 to the power of 3. Simple.
And what's so cool is that the exact same logic works for tiny numbers. With 0.004, we just jump the other way. We go 1, 2, 3 jumps to the right to get to 4. And because we move to the right to make the number bigger, our power of 10 has to be negative. So we get 4 times 10 to the power of negative 3.
Okay, that jumps idea is awesome for getting the feel of it. Now, let's lock in the official rule that makes this whole thing work consistently every single time.
So here's the official deal. Every number in standard form has to look like this. Some number a times 10 to some power n. The one crucial rule. The only thing you really have to remember is that the front number, a, has to be somewhere between 1 and 10. That's the whole game. We're just making our jump counting official.
Let's circle back to that huge number from the start, 72 million. We just slide that decimal point all the way from the end until we get a number between 1 and 10, which is 7.2. And how many jumps did that take? 7 of them. So the standard form is 7.2 times 10 to the power of 7.
And you guessed it, the logic works perfectly for the tiny numbers too. For 0.00056, we move the decimal 4 spots to the right to get 5.6. That move to the right is our signal that the exponent has to be negative. So the answer is 5.6 times 10 to the negative 4.
Okay, making numbers look neat is one thing. But this is where standard form goes from a neat trick to an actual superpower. It makes really complicated math incredibly easy.
And this right here is the big payoff. I mean, instead of trying to multiply these huge numbers with all those zeros, you get to do a little bit of simple addition with the exponents. It's a massive, massive shortcut. All right, just take a look at this problem. If we wrote this out the long way, it would be 30,000 times 2,000. I mean, that's kind of a headache to do in your head, right? But in standard form, it's a piece of cake.
Here is the beautiful trick. You just split the problem in two. First, you multiply the front numbers. 3 times 2, that's 6. Easy. Then, for the powers of 10, you just add the exponents. 4 plus 3 gives you 7.
And then, you just put the two pieces back together. The final answer is 6 times 10 to the 7th. That's 60 million. And we just did that in our heads. No calculator, no scribbling down long multiplication. That is the power of this.
And what about division? Yep, same elegant logic. You just swap out addition for subtraction. Here, we divide the front numbers. 8 divided by 4 is 2. Then we just subtract the exponents. 6 minus 2 is 4. And our final answer is 2 times 10 to the 4th. It's fast, it's efficient, and there's no messy long division.
So now that we have the mechanics down, we can kind of zoom out and start using this to think differently about the world, to really understand the sheer scale of things, just like a scientist would.
And this brings us to this really cool idea called order of magnitude. Basically, you forget the exact number for a second. The order of magnitude is all about that power of 10. It just gives you a quick ballpark estimate of how big something really is. So, take a look at this table.
For 4.5 times 10 to the 6th, that front number, 4.5, is less than 5, so we just say it's roughly on the scale of 10 to the 6th. But check out the second one. Since 9.1 is way closer to 10 than it is to 1, it's almost at the next power of 10. So we round up, and its order of magnitude is actually 10 to the negative 2.
And this chart really drives that point home. Each jump in the exponent isn't just one little step, it is a 10 times multiplier. The difference between something that's 10 to the 6th and 10 to the 7th isn't just 1, it's a massive, massive leap in scale.
So, quiz time. This is exactly the kind of problem where this way of thinking is absolutely essential. You're asked to compare these two numbers. Where would you even start?
Here's the golden rule. Don't even look at the 3.2 or the 7.5 at first. Seriously, just look at the powers. A 10 to the 8th is an entire order of magnitude bigger than a 10 to the 7th. It's 10 times bigger. So of course the first number is larger, and we barely had to do any math to know that for sure.
And that's the real magic here. You've basically just gained a new intuition for scale. Now you can estimate, you can compare, and you can understand the universe on a whole new level, from the distance between stars to the size of an atom. So, my question to you is this. Now that you can think in orders of magnitude, what's the first big question you're going to go and estimate?
Surds. You know, that's a word that can make a lot of people pretty nervous in a math class. But what if I told you they're not nearly as complicated as they look? In the next few minutes, we're going to break them down and make them simple. Let's dive in.
Oh, you know that feeling, right? You're cruising through a problem, everything's going great, and then, bam, you hit a roadblock. The square root of 72. It's not a nice, clean number. It's just messy. So what are you supposed to do with that? Well, that messy root, that's what we call a surd. And today, we're going to give you the tools to not just deal with them, but to actually master them. Seriously, by the end of this, you'll be cleaning them up like a pro. So let's look at the core difference here. On one hand, you have the square root of 9. That's a clean, simple 3. Easy. But the square root of 2? That thing gives you a decimal that goes on forever without repeating. That's a surd. It's an irrational root. All right, so how do we start taming these wild, messy roots? Well, it all kicks off with a really simple but powerful little analogy. I want you to imagine the number under the square root is sitting inside a little box. Your job, your mission really, is to peek inside that box and pull out any perfect squares you can find. It's kind of like a little treasure hunt inside the number. Let's see how this works with the square root of 18. We look inside the 18 box for a perfect square that's a factor. And aha, there's a 9. So we rewrite 18 as 9 times 2. Then we can pull the square root of 9, which is just 3, outside the root sign. The 2 gets left behind inside. And just like that, the square root of 18 becomes a much tidier 3 root 2. Okay, so that little box analogy, it's the whole idea behind the two main methods we're going to use to simplify any surd out there. Let's break them down. All right, method 1, we call this the long cut. And yeah, it takes a few more steps, but it is absolutely foolproof. You can't go wrong with this one. You just break the number all the way down to its prime factors. For 72, that's a bunch of 2s and 3s. Then you look for pairs. For every pair of numbers you find, you get to pull one of them outside the root. So a pair of 2s becomes a single 2 outside. A pair of 3s becomes a single 3. You multiply those outside numbers together, and you get 6 root 2. Done. Okay, now for the shortcut. This one is all about training your eye to spot the biggest perfect square that fits into your number. For 72, you might spot that 36 is a factor. So you just rewrite the square root of 72 as the square root of 36 times 2. We all know the square root of 36 is 6, and boom, you get 6 root 2. Same answer, way faster once you get good at spotting those squares. Okay, so that's simplifying. That's tool number 1 in our toolkit. Now, let's grab tool number 2, rationalization. This is all about cleaning up fractions that have a surd hanging out in the denominator. And you might be thinking, why? Why do we even need to do this? It's a totally fair question. I mean, a number is a number. Who cares where the messy part is, right? Well, the straight up answer is it's a rule. Especially for exams. It's just considered good manners in math to not have a surd in the bottom of a fraction. Think of it as just one of those rules of the game you've got to play by. To do this, especially when the denominator looks a little more complicated, we have a secret weapon. It's called the conjugate, and trust me, it sounds way fancier than it is. You literally just take the expression on the bottom and flip the sign in the middle. A plus becomes a minus becomes a plus. That's it. So what's the magic here? Why does this little trick work so well? It all goes back to a classic bit of algebra you've definitely seen before, the difference of two squares. When you multiply something by its conjugate, the messy middle terms with the square roots just cancel each other out. It's a beautiful little trick that guarantees you'll get rid of the surd on the bottom. Okay, so we've got our two main tools, simplifying and rationalizing. You're armed and ready. So let's put it all to the test with a trickier problem, something you might see in a math competition. All right, take a look at this. At first glance, yeah, it looks pretty gnarly. But here's the thing. You already have every single skill you need to solve this. I promise. So where do you even begin? The key, like with a lot of math, is not to panic. Just focus on one piece at a time. We're going to start with the top part, the numerator, and just simplify those surds individually. Let's get to it. For the square root of 50, the biggest perfect square inside is 25, right? So that becomes 5 root 2. And for the square root of 8, the perfect square is 4, so that becomes 2 root 2. See? Already looks way less scary. And now for the really satisfying part. Because both of our terms now have a root 2, we can just add them together. Think of it like this. 5 apples plus 2 apples gives you 7 apples. Same thing here. 5 root 2 plus 2 root 2 is just 7 root 2. And here it is, the big payoff. That whole complicated mess has boiled down to 7 root 2 divided by root 2. The root 2's on the top and bottom just cancel each other out, and we're left with 7. How cool is that? All that work for a nice, clean 7. All right, before we finish up, let's just quickly go over a few common mistakes, some little traps you want to make sure you avoid. So keep these things in your back pocket. Number 1, and this is a big one, you can never, ever split a square root over a plus or minus sign. It just doesn't work that way. Second, if you see a denominator with 2 parts, your brain should immediately scream, conjugate! And last but not least, always, always double check that your answer is as simple as it can be. Sometimes a perfect square is still hiding in there. So there you have it. What started out looking like a messy root is now a type of problem that you have the exact tools to solve. The secret is always to simplify first, then see what you can combine or cancel out. So now it's your turn. Go on, put this into practice. You'll be surprised how quickly those intimidating problems start to look simple.